Okay, we are live again. This is our third session of the day. We're talking with Rachel Presser how indie developers can polish their branding. So, if you would like to introduce yourself, I will leave you to it here.
Hi, I'm Rachel Presser of Sonic Toe Consulting and Media. You may remember me from such conferences, as that shit crazy Toad lady who's always giving out chip clips and Toad stickers at GDC and other events. You've probably seen my amphibious ramblings around the internet at various points. I write a lot for Gama Sutra as well. So thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks Jay and Daniel for hosting this really cool event and having me on. So a little bit about Sonic Toe Consulting. I've been in this industry for about 10 years now, but I've had Sonic Toe for about 5. So as the name implies, I do business and games consulting, mainly for indie, AAA, and freelancers. I also do B2B consulting for professional services, other companies that want to do business with game developers, or, they want to have a game commission, but they've never worked with a dev team before. So I do that. I also do business education, obviously one-on-one, but also I work with institutions who, they have these awesome game design programs, but they just don't really know about business. So that's where I come in. So as I put in big letters here, I have a new e-learning store coming soon. So please, message me on LinkedIn, Twitter, drop something in the comments, what kind of educational content that you want to see. And visit sonictoad.com to learn more. And so without further ado, well, let's get into what you came for, which is learning about branding. So most indie developers, at least who I've talked to at conferences, when I've given these kinds of talks, when I just ask around on the internet, what's the biggest thing you struggle with in terms of, the actual business of games? And marketing is virtually always up there, always. We're in a very crowded landscape now. The industry's a lot different for independent developers today compared to when I first came in about a decade ago. And there's a couple of reasons for this. The first being that there's just so much information out there about marketing, in general, and about games. And what makes it just so difficult, just from what I can see, is that, there's two prongs to this. One being that these marketing methods are constantly evolving. That's the first one. But then it's also because these marketing methods are also, they can seem kind of contradictory. I work with a lot of people in the digital marketing sphere. I do a lot of marketing work, and I just see all the time, see 18,000 headlines blaring, SEO is dead, let's not do that anymore. You got to do PPC. Oh no, don't do PPC anymore. It doesn't work. So there's just so much information. It's so conflicting. But what it really comes down to is that, a lot of traditional marketing is really always not a good fit for indie games. We just have so many unique quirks and challenges when it comes to, actively building a fan base and a community, getting the word out there. And indie devs in particular are just so overwhelmed because a lot of us, got day jobs or got other businesses to run on top of making the game, building a community. It's just so much. And there's so many wild cards. You don't know what kind of batshit crazy guerrilla marketing campaign is going to take off, or some really methodical thing you put a lot of thought into doesn't work. You never know. But there is one common thread that I've seen with why a lot of indie game marketing campaigns tend to fail. It's because you're missing the foundation, which is a solid brand. We're going to dive into there's so many different things about branding today, but that's just the main point I want to drive home today. More than anything, if there's anything you're going to take away from my talk today, it's that you need a solid brand. Think about how, you can't make a game without an engine. If you've got, your car sitting in your driveway and starting, imagine that the engine's missing. That's what we have going on here. So, what exactly is branding anyway? People use branding and marketing, together, but they're actually not interchangeable. So the dictionary defines branding as a marketing practice where you have a name, a design, a symbol, something that's going to easily distinguish you from the tens of thousands of other game studios out there. And so branding is, it's something you start off with, but it is a process that evolves. Like marketing is more of like a general term. Like it can mean like one campaign, it can mean one strategy, and it kind of means like, the big like universe of things. Branding is just one planet. And then advertising is like, not there's like it's part of branding, like it uses branding, but like I see people use them interchangeably, but they're not interchangeable. So why shouldn't developers though care about this? You may think like, hey, I just want to make a great game, get it out there. If people like it, I know my audience, I know what they want to see. People gave me a great feedback at PAX East or wherever else you were showing the game. Like that's all fantastic. That's all important. But there's actually a lot of reasons why indie devs should care about branding. And I'm going to go dive into them now. So one of them being that it helps establish ownership of your work. And this is important for a lot of reasons, but one of the foremost being that, hey, like if you have actual, like branding marks, which we're going to get into on the next slide, when you actually have like these branding marks that actually say, hey, I made this, I own it, this is what makes, my game different from like, the other, like couple hundred side scrollers that just got released on Steam this year. This is me, this is my team, this is what we do different, this is what we want to be known for. It helps so establish, that kind of differentiation, who owns this game out there. And what I mean by building long-term value is that, like I said, like branding is an initial process, but it is one that, it grows, it evolves. Like when people actually get to know your brand, what it is, that's the thing. Like when you give it time, you get recognized more over the years. It does build up this kind of long-term value. Like case in point, like if I, like go to, like my web developer or my, whoever's got my domains handled, like if I actually go type in like my domain name, it's actually worth like something like $1,500 now. It was worth $0 5 years ago. That's what I mean. Like in terms of domain, in terms of like people actually knowing what, who you are, what you stand for. And so it also demonstrates, that you are totally invested in what you're doing. Like having branding is what separates a hobbyist from a professional. Not knocking hobbyist devs. I think it's a wonderful, fulfilling hobby to have. But if you want to do this for a living, you actually want to make money off this to some degree, you really got to go invest in your branding. And because, having that kind of branding does at least give, against some idea of what to expect. Whether you're going to meet or subvert those expectations is yet to be determined. But that's the thing. It still drives home some idea of what people should expect, what they should think when they hear about you. And it's so that therefore it's important for both the business to business and the business to consumer side of things, because it gives the player, it gives your audience an idea what to expect. And then if you want to work, with the bigger players like publishers, investors, that's the great opportunity to do that today, since we have, lead to max sessions going on later today with lots of different companies. So you want them to take you seriously. You really got to invest in your branding and show that you're making an active effort to do so. So now that we've established why branding is important, well, what are you going to do with all of it? So this is what you do with it. This is not even like a fully conclusive list, but it's just a general idea of where your actual branding material is going to go, like namely your website, when you set up, distributor pages like on Steam, itch.io, anywhere else you're going to go sell your game. Any other marketing materials you have, like business cards, if you have swag bag, like my wonderful chip clips, so stickers, if you're going to have pens, pretty much anything else like that you're going to give out at events, which sadly we're not doing now, won't be for the foreseeable future with the current state of the union. But there's nothing stopping you from having it made, mailing it to people. And one day we'll hopefully have conventions again safely. And letterhead and documents is another thing, because when you actually have to start sending business correspondence, we do most of it by email now, but you still sometimes will have to actually send official documentation, and it's not going to look as good if you just have this basic ass Word document with your name on it. no, you gotta have like cool looking letterhead. So obviously game trailers, box art, anything that's gonna have, your logo, your marks, that splash screen opening fanfare when people start up your game. That's an important place for it to go. Like the main menu is another place. And then pretty much anytime you're asked for a logo, like, yeah, take a look at like that Meet to Match page and look at all those logos all over the place. There's going to be lots of times you're going to be asked for a logo, and that is something you really don't want to half-ass. So with that said, there's two faces, of branding, which we're going to talk more about that left half, the fun, creative, and like artistic side of things. Is actually what most of this talk is going to be about. And then the second side, is like the business and legal standpoints of branding, which I'm just going to get into on the next slide. We're going to spend more time on that latter half. And oh, look, this is a total coincidence, but there's a really cute amphibian in this logo. Wow. See, yeah, you got to have that kind of consistency. Okay, so there's many goals of having an established brand, and there's some business and legal reasons why you need to do so. So like I already mentioned, it does prove, to like publishers, investors, financiers, anyone who you want to do business with, it's proving that like you have a real business. So that's the thing. You need to have this like for tax and legal purposes, because the IRS does do, a lot of checks about whether something is a business or a hobby. Shameless plug, I wrote the book about game developer taxes because I was, I was a tax law professional before I got into game development, and I wrote a whole book about this. I have many articles in Gama Sutra about this topic, and hobby versus business cases are a very, very important thing for us, because game dev is frequently treated as a very expensive hobby with sadly limited profit potential. So if you want to stop the IRS from going after you, there's a lot of steps you got to take. One of them being establishing branding, establishing a business entity, formalizing and registering your business, making sure that like the marks you like to register are not taken, the name you want to use isn't taken. And so I just briefly mentioned about copywriting versus trademark. So our wonderful game lawyers, out there can help you with all that stuff. That's not my area of expertise. But in general, though, so your actual game, your web content, all the stuff that you're writing, your drawing that you're creating, that's still copyrighted. Logos, slogans, other types of marks, that's what gets trademarked. And so talk to a gaming lawyer about when and whether you would like to do so. But it's important from a business and legal standpoint, because if someone is using your marks, you can sue them. So it's important to have these differentiating factors for that reason. But now the main reason we're going to be diving into, branding and like the chief goal of branding is that branding is really all about the impression you want to give, what you want to communicate, how you want to communicate it, whether it's going to be through imagery, words, all the other elements we're going to be discussing later, like how you want people to feel, when they're interacting, with all your stuff, not just your games, but your website, your social pages, anything pertaining to you and your work, what's the impression you want to give them? And so I did this little infographic on the left here about, the importance of all these different elements. Because there's like this University of Minnesota study that was done actually back in the 80s, but still gets cited to this day, mostly by marketers, but by other researchers as well, about how the human brain processes images, opposed to words. And then so this university study found that we process, pictures literally 60,000 times faster than text. That's why logos and color schemes, all the things we'll be discussing, are so freaking important, because that is a really dire first impression that you have to make, and and the effect it has on people keep seeing it over time. And then there's also the more linguistic copywriting side of branding, which pertains to your site copy, the way that you write or have other people write for you. The Content Marketing Institute, which is a pretty authoritative marketing resource. So they say that like having like well-written site copy will produce 7.8 times more traffic than just posting the bare minimum. Well, so because game devs have slightly different needs than the average like content client out there, I would maybe take this one with a grain of salt. Maybe not 7. You probably want to see maybe 7.8 times, but in terms of like raw engagement, though, it will be higher when you actually do have like language that fully encompasses your brand. Aside from just, oh, this is the game, this is the studio, come read about us. So yeah, it's more about what you want to communicate and how you're going to do so. And so as for how you're going to communicate, with your point and like the way you want people to think and feel, we're going to dive into all these different elements because they're all equally important, and they play a major role in how people are going to perceive your particular studio. So yeah, logos are extremely important because I have like heartbreakingly watched a lot of indie devs just starting out, and they'll like be like, oh yeah, I'll just go on Fiverr or something and go get a shitty logo made, or oh, I'll just go pull something up and just because it's better than nothing. And okay, that might be a decent start, but you really got to like invest something in your logo because they're a major element of brand cohesiveness. And you got to basically make it like compelling or somehow like communicates something about your work, about your studio, like your values, aesthetics, something. It's got to basically be memorable. And why isn't memorable? Like, why would someone want to go check out a game that's got your logo on it? So I just pulled a couple like from the internet, and yeah, like there's a myriad of different design options that you've got. Like we have like this like simple like clean looking one for Rockstar, this like more like out there one for Spicy Horse. Like there's so like take a look at different game studios of all sizes, like just make like a list of them, be like, okay, I like this about the logo, or I don't like this. Like, how would you do it differently for your own studio? Or like, do you think that like that logo aligns with your expectations of their work? So that's something important to consider. And so as I mentioned, with language, it's a very important part of branding because the way that you communicate what you're communicating is obviously it's important, but yeah, like how are you going to do so, and what kind of language are you going to use to not only make your points, but also like how does it sound different, or how does it sound similar to what other devs are doing? How are you making it unique? And so these are some of like the different types of words and phrases to keep in mind. So like slogans and taglines tend to get confused. While there's not really a hard, fast rule for how long a slogan should be, or if you should even have one, depending on how you roll, they're usually about, like 2 to 5 words. Like it's really like easy to remember. Like it's punchy. So whether it's like funny or shocking or it subverts your expectations, even like it's something that's going to like, have an impact and be easy to remember. Whereas a tagline can also be easy to remember, but it's longer than a slogan, and it's usually like meant to like drive. So like the slogan gets your attention, the tagline drives it home. And then webpage copy, like that's extremely important, because who's the audience? So is this a player who wants to find out more about the game, more about what kind of work that you're doing, or is it a potential investor who maybe wants to help fund your next project? Like how are you going to write about like your games, your intellectual properties, like how you guys got started and your origins? Like what type of communication and the audience is important to consider, because you can have like that very like clinical type of information someplace on your website, but then still have all these other web pages that like are really out there and like use the same kind of like, environmental like storytelling that your game does. I go for like social media and email communication. So like, how do you want to come across, to your fans? That's a very important thing that can kind of get overlooked. Because like I said, I get it. Like the biggest challenge, of indie game marketing is that we're overwhelmed. We're not really putting a lot of thought into some of these things. And hey, getting some kind of communications out there is important than not at all. Getting some kind of marketing out there is better than nothing. But we want to do better than nothing. That's why you're here. That's why we're doing this. And so when you have that kind of like cohesion with your communications, with your site copy, these other things, that's referred to forming a brand voice. So case in point, like I use a lot of like amphibian related terms like in my communications, in my site copy, all the other stuff. Because I love frogs and toads. Like I think it's like impossible not to love them. I'm really passionate about amphibians, and I just freaking love talking about them. I could do it all day. And so I know that like my average audience, unless they're also toad people or professional herpetologists, are not gonna really get that. But so you have to like, make it. I had to make it understandable for like the average person who's taking a look. But you can still see what was being done there. That all these amphibian references are being made because it's like, oh hey, this is like really, like there's fun, there's passion to be found here, and that's the impression I want to give off. And so it's the same kind of deal here. So like, what kind of impression do you want to give about your games? Like if you have like, say maybe like some kind of like cyberpunk dystopia, like you could for your game setting, like you could totally bring that out in your brand voice, and just go wild with it, have fun with it. You could take on your actual game world or game characters and like have them literally do the talking for you. I've seen that before. So I also have this little bullet point about style guide. Yeah, so unless you're gonna have like a ton of written content, which have at it. We're here because we want to try new stuff. We want to maybe try things that have been tried before. If you want to do like a ton of written content, if that's what engages your particular fan base, then and especially if you want to like take on other writers to help you with it, that's when when you have like this brand voice that's kind of evolved over time. You get a style guide that has things like like we want to like use like verbiage. We want to use this word and that word. Like don't use stuff that sounds like this, and provide examples. Like we want to take like like a positive tone or like a nihilistic and post-apocalyptic kind of tone. You take into account like like the reading level of your target audience. Like yes, that's all important stuff to consider, and there's many wonderful professional writers out there who can help you with this. We actually, I think, have a whole session today with some of the game writers where they won't let me talk about brand voice kind of stuff, but yeah, there's some wonderful talent you can source right there if you need help with this kind of thing. So moving on from language, we're going to get into colors, because colors are a really important part of branding. And because they make us feel things. Like think about how like blues and greens can be like a really calming. That's why you see like 80,000 interior decorating magazines have articles about like let's go paint your living room blue if you want to have this like calming escape somewhere. Or like McDonald's and Subway and all of them, they'll use like yellow in their logos and their lettering because it's a loud color that gets your attention. And some studies apparently have been done that actually makes you hungrier. So like colors make us feel things, so there's like people who actually have like entire, if not degrees, at least just that they devoted a lot of study like to light color design and how it makes us feel, how people perceive things. And so like think about like what kinds of colors you see like in your everyday life, whether it's brand related or not. It doesn't have to be about like logos and things. It could be like an article of clothing you really like, or like my parents living room always had this like awesome decor that always made me feel safer at home. Or like that that bar I can't go to right now because we're under lockdown. Like, always made me feel like I was just like ready to see where the night would take me. Like, think about that kind of stuff. Like like the kind of colors that you would or wouldn't want to use. Why? Like, what do you personally associate with them? What do you think society associates those colors with? It's an extremely important part of branding. And so for a little like crash course in light color and design, because I actually went to art college almost 20 years ago and remembered some of this stuff. Yeah, so there's just all kinds of different ways you can find colors, that you think would really fit your branding. So like there's hues, which when you're going around like that outer edge of the wheel, like saturation is like like how bright and concentrated it is. Yeah, and then like tints are like lighter versions, shades are darker versions, and then you can like go around this color wheel. Like, it's set up this way on purpose because complementing colors are opposite of each other. Like yellow and purple, for instance, like are opposites on that wheel that you can see. And then there's all kinds of like charts and like methods you can look up for how to use color wheels. Like, you can like place like an equilateral triangle on here, and then that'll actually like, show you like, oh hey, like these colors together are going to make some kind of impact. Or you just put some totally random shape on there and see what it gives you, or just say screw the color wheel and go with what you think goes great together, just based on like your own experimentation, or just like seeing like what other people have come up with. Look, we're in a highly referential field. It's okay. I know that like everyone's always like panicking about having to like do like the hottest new thing that wasn't discovered yet, and yeah, that's important. But sometimes you also just got to be like, hey, this studio already did that and it looks great. Let's go with something similar. So I just like for fun, I made a couple of these little like color schemes, just to get you started. Just like open up a design tool, just like pop a couple on and just, or be like, hey, like these colors, like remind me of this type of game, or like my game uses this particular palette. I think that maybe we should go with this for our entire studio's brand. Just, try different things, see what kind of stuff that you come up with. And so secondary to color is that textures and shapes are also an extremely important element, in branding, because just like with the colors, they can, like make us, perceive things differently. Like take a look at, some game studio logos. Take a look, especially from different eras, because if you take a look at like, say, logos from like the 1960s and 70s, things were mostly like very flat kind of colors, like really clean lines. And then it got a little more rendered, more like, I guess, like spacey, like by the 1990s. And then you look at nowadays, and like you start to see like those flat colors are coming back, but with more minimalistic types of shapes, or or things are just like hyper render, hyper detailed. So it's important to take textures into account, along with what kind of shapes you're going to use, because it's not just based on like the kind of art style present in your games, but it's also like this is what people are looking at, how to make it compelling for someone to want to go click on and learn more about you. Like why or why not would someone want to do that, based on the kind of textures that you're using and what kind of shapes are present. So I just like pulled a whole bunch of shapes, onto this board here, so you can like get an idea of like what types of shapes and layouts and textures to experiment with. So like looking at this top left one here, like that kind of makes me think of like one of those like natural foods branch, because it's got that very like like wholesome kind of color scheme, and it has like this very soft, like very like malleable looking kind of shape to it. Like I could totally see like a mobile game about like a coffee shop or something, like being made in this palette, like with this kind of shape. And then someone who like really digs that kind of aesthetic, would definitely want to have that and see what it's about. Then in the bottom center block here, we have like this really hyper rendered, like in complex and like free form, like little mess of shapes and texture here. That kind of makes me think of like late 90s 3D art. Yeah, like the possibilities, are pretty much endless. Just experiment like with different types of shapes. Take a look at what some studios like did with, as far as shapes and textures go. Be like, hey, I really think that like they gave the impression they make like these slick and futuristic kind of games, but then it turned out that they didn't. Or like I really think that that this logo actually does match the art style seen in a lot of their work. So yeah, just take a look at what's out there, like draw inspiration from a couple different sources, and yeah, you'll come up with some pretty cool stuff. And so taking from both like the shapes and textures concept and with the language concepts, fonts and text styles are also an integral part of branding because they can make a really big impact. This is especially important for web content where you control the appearance, communications where you control the appearance, because when you publish stuff on other websites, like getting like your Steam copy looking nice and all that, like you may or may not have as much control over how it looks. But when people are visiting like your web page, you've got their attention, because you got to think about the time and the place here, because the reason why all this stuff is so important for brand cohesion is that when someone's visiting your website, you have their undivided attention. It's not like when they're browsing games on Steam or like the App Store or something, and there's like literally thousands of other games out there that could be, like grabbing their attention too. Like, you've got their undivided attention. They're there to learn about you. You want to make the most of it. So, yeah, how that text looks is really important to how people are going to perceive you. It doesn't even matter what kind of information you're communicating. You got to make it easy to read from an accessibility standpoint. So if someone has vision that's not the sharpest, or you have someone who's using an assistive device to help them read, is your text going to be readable through those formats? Any kinds of printed goods on their physical branding, how is that text going to look on that? So I'm thinking about how people put stickers on their laptops all the time, and obviously the logo, the color, the shape, all that is important for that part, but text is important too. So if you've got words in in these kinds of branding items, why would someone want to put that on their laptop? It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. I know there's a million and one tired jokes about Comic Sans, which made onto the slide. But yeah, if you have a font that has a negative association like that, you might want to reconsider, unless you're maybe making some ironic joke about it or whatever. One of these more boring and stable kind of fonts that may not get the reaction that a custom font or a cooler looking one would. And it's important to do this for not just your own logo, but also your individual game titles. So yeah, I grabbed a couple fonts just to illustrate why they're important part of branding, because it helps communicate what the game is about, what you are about. So look at how you look at the way that the kerning is on that text, line spacing, but also how those letters are shaped, what kind of colors you're going to use. Does this align with the title and or the types of games that you're known for in general? Audio. Okay, so this is actually something that gets frequently overlooked for indie devs and just small companies in general. And of course, I say it's overlooked. I'm actually not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but I'm still going to discuss it because there's so many amazing opportunities you have to incorporate audio into your branding, and sometimes you just don't think about it, until someone points it out. signature sounds, which I'm going to get into on the next 2 slides. Your opening fanfare, like that's a big one. Because I think that, we have shorter attention spans these days. Games are not like this, like isolated and, kind of niche that they were like 20, 30 years ago, where having an opening fanfare was, I think, a bigger deal back then. It still is now, because when you've already got, someone past the point of buying your game, you've gotten them interested, you've gotten them emotionally invested, they bought the game, they open it up on their computer, and you want to have that kind of opening fanfare that shows up every time that they start one of your games, and so that's an important part that you don't really want to overlook. Same for signature sound. You could just, if you don't want to do a full fanfare, you can just do 1 or 2 sounds that just start up every time someone opens up your game. That's an important part of branding you don't want to overlook. So I don't know if you just heard the audio that came in. I was having a little troubleshooting this before. So yeah, because it also does come in handy for things like game trailers and if you're going to do any other advertising. So that Nintendo Switch sound is iconic now. There's so many of these sounds that come from from game ads that indies tend to overlook. Yeah, because we don't have the advertising firepower of a company like Nintendo, but it's still really important because those sounds, they can be just as iconic as your logo or any other imagery associated with your studio. So it does get overlooked, but a little sound can really go a long way. So I just pulled up a couple samples that I thought particularly memorable. So I've already got into the Switch one, but Sierra games. I grew up with Sierra games. They were a very very integral part of my upbringing that made me want to become a game developer. Really get immersed in this industry. And I knew that whenever they had that that really iconic opening fanfare that was that dun 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 with the bells that came after it that would shine on this digitized version of the dome and half dome and I knew I was going to be in for this epic experience where everything in this game would try to kill me and I wouldn't care because the frustration was part of the joy back then. We were masochists in the 80s and 90s. That was how we rolled back then. There was no place to go look up hints. You got to call a hint line and pay per minute like you would on one of those numbers. That's how it was back then. And yeah, so in this iconic opening sequence for Konami, it was the same kind of deal. It had that little purple laser that would come in, and then those chimes that would play as the logo filled the screen. Yeah, that stuff's important, and I think indie devs are really missing out on something by not always including this in that opening fanfare, or just having some kind of signature sound at startup. Dark Soul. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't come in all the way. My imaging program kind of screwed this up, so you know what I mean. Dark Souls, you press start to die, you get that that iconic sound that just plays right then. So yeah, all of our wonderful and talented game audio people can help you with that and help you create something that's going to be remembered for years and really help solidify your branding. Yeah, because the challenge comes, okay, so we discussed all these different elements, but what about making it all come together? That can be a challenging part, because I know that, look, I'm an indie dev myself. I've now run 2 different studios, and it can be like herding cats, and branding's kind of no different in that regard, especially if you may be thinking, well, hey, I'm a broke ass indie, I don't know how I can do all this, or oh, I can't really hire a graphic artist to take care of all this for me at the moment. How can I get started? That's the thing. So the biggest cornerstone, of having a solid brand is that it's it's that frequency of putting yourself out there and how often people see it and the ubiquity of it. hey, like how many different places, like, is your branding going? Like, are you, like, so I know that right now we're not really having a presence at shows and the like, so we gotta make do with digital events like these. But yeah, like, are you getting on these types of streams? Do you have, something of a social media presence? Are you getting, those like itch.io and Steam pages and other distributors? Are you getting that stuff out there? Like, do you have, your own website really built out when it's doing more than just being like, hi, this is me, this is the game I made? Like, are you actually like really truly building something with it? And so, yeah, it can be like, kind of frustrating figuring out what to do with branding. But that's the thing. Like, that's what makes marketing, both like fun and frustrating, because you never know what's going to take off, and you never know what's going to miserably fail. The same can be said just about business in general. But when it comes to marketing, though, well, that's the thing. See, you should not experiment with things like copyright law and doing your taxes. That's stuff you don't experiment with. But when it comes to marketing, though, there's so many different things you can try. And like, if one method doesn't work, you can try another. And look, and brands evolve too. Like, people, can like, look, they change their values, their goals, their priorities. You may change the same, too, like depending on the types of games that you're making, depending on the type of audience that you've cultivated over time. It evolves. You gotta experiment a bit to be like, oh, so hey, if people aren't responding like to this type of color scheme, or they don't think that this like shape looks compelling, try a different one. There are so many like different ways that you can like A/B test nowadays, like especially if you have a mailing list built up. There's like so many different ways that like you can try all these things and just see what gets results. And so yeah, if you don't have like enough money right now to like hire like a branding artist who like specializes in these types of assets, there's like lots of tools you can like try for free or really cheap. So yeah, full disclosure, Canva is one of my affiliates. It's much appreciated if you want to get a Canva account and you get a premium membership. Please click my link; it's much appreciated. If you don't want to, it's okay. I use Canva for a lot of my design work. Like, I do have a wonderful graphic artist who made my iconic toads and wordy textures and all that fun stuff. And then I have like some stuff that like I leave all the harder things to him. I do some simple design work with my branding art myself in Canva. Krita is also a wonderful resource if you want to just experiment, with different shapes, colors, or just be like, hey, I mocked up this thing. Now I need a real artist to go help me. PicMonkey is also good for that purpose. And then you'd be surprised at just like how many like tools that you may already have laying around. Like like if you made your site in WordPress, or you just have PowerPoint. There's like so many different ways that you can just like look at all the different themes, all the different like smart art, and be like, hey, I would like something that kind of looks like this, or maybe uses this texture or this color scheme. Like, just open your mind a bit, take a look around. And then there's also some graphic designers out there who may have, a template or a kit of sorts. Like, so if you can't afford them to do the whole enchilada, like right now, they'd be like, hey, here's, like a little kit you can start with. I have a guide of how you can start to, make your own logo with this tool I made, or here's how you can form a really cool color scheme that gets people's attention. Like, there's all sorts of resources out there. Yeah, if you don't have the if you don't have the time or like the skills to do it yourself, or if you don't have like the budget for a graphic designer, yeah, there's stuff out there to get started. Then you can always get a pro to refine it down the line. So yeah, thanks so much for for tuning in. And thanks again to Jay and Dan, for hosting this really cool event. Good luck to everyone, doing Meet to Match. And since I think we have a couple minutes before
we have a bunch of questions for you.
Oh, nice. Okay, let me exit out of that. What am I doing? Okay.
All right, I will pull them up here. We'll just put. There we go. Let's see. First question from. From Benjamin Rand, at what point should a developer begin building? Because we've only got just several minutes left, and we've got like a bunch of questions, so I wanted to get to them. What point should a developer begin building their brand, and where should they start when building their brand?
As early as possible. And I'm actually going to give you another helpful link that from a piece I wrote for Gama Sutra a little while back. As early as possible. So it could be like, after you've already gotten your game kicked off. It could be after you've purchased a domain. Think about the image that you want to project, like like the impression you want to give of your work, using all these elements that I discussed. The earlier the better. Save early, save often. It's the same thing with branding. You want to do this like early and often. So as early as possible.
Okie doke. Next question from Corundum Games. If you're going to commission a logo, what would be useful information related to technical and design to provide to the artist?
All right, that's a wonderful question. You basically want to give them as many references as possible. So said, if you're looking at other studios logos, there's other brands that maybe are not game companies. You'll be like, hey, I really like this type of texture, or I really like this color scheme, or I don't like this. How can you make it look like this type of design I have in mind? As for technical information, if the designer is not familiar with stuff it was specific for game related branding, you should give them references for things like hey, there's all sorts of guides out there for what size that say Steam ads should be, for instance. I know that for Steam in particular, it tends to change a lot, but there's so basically look up things like guides that tell them what dimension, what resolutions to use. Ask them, if they should already have a portfolio up on their website, but ask them, hey, what kind of resolution do you recommend, for a website logo versus something that I'm going to use for a sticker. Because if you're going to have also goods commission, they will usually have some kind of guide up for the designer to take a look at. And I just also popped a link in the I think it's in private chat, not the comments, but yes.
I can post that. I'll post that in comments.
You're going to start your game marking early. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to post this in the comments really quick. Boop. Okay. I would also suggest to get your logo as a vector, right? So it can be scalable. Or if you're not going to get a vector image, to get get it large, right? Because you never know. You're like, oh, I just want it for website or for this or for that, but you never know. You might want it for a big banner.
Get a vector. I mean? Vector's a one size fits all kind of thing. I'm also going to pop in this tool here. So you're going to get something called a .ai file. If you just want to be like, oh God, I have to do a virtual event and I can't upload this AI file everywhere. Zamzar is a wonderful free tool where you can convert that AI to a JPEG and then beat the crap out of it in Canva or even MS Paint. If you're like, oh shit, I need this small version of a logo. I don't know what I'm doing with Photoshop, or I don't want to buy the subscription. Yeah, Zamzar is a great tool for doing that, for converting AI to the JPEG.
Or you can just get a 4,000 by 4,000 resolution logo, just a massively huge logo.
That's how you're going to do your brand ubiquity. Take up the whole damn page.
That's right.
We're just going to go upload this AI file. Oh my God, this toad wart is taking up the whole fucking page. And that's what.
All right, exactly. That's hilarious. All right, here we go. Here's a little personal one. This is from Only by Midnight from YouTube. Which indies do you think have good branding?
Oh my God, that's like asking me to name my favorite toad. Because there's a lot of indies that got really good branding. God, I don't know if I really had to pull one off the top of my head. I don't know. Waja Eye comes to mind. Definitely. And actually, Winter Wolves is another good one. Not so much. Don't get me wrong. I love them dearly, but their individual games, I think, are branded really well. When I hear Winter Wolves, yeah, I don't really know exactly what to expect, but yeah, they come to mind though. They've done a great job with like their individual game branding. Um, I'll be here all freaking day otherwise.
Right, right.
But yeah, those are the first that just like popped into my head right now. But yeah.
Well, you know what? There's a ton of questions. So how can people get a hold of you to ask more questions?
So yeah, you can hit me up yeah on LinkedIn. I think I did pop my LinkedIn link earlier. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can also hit me up at sonictoad.com. If you would like to do some consulting, clarity.fm/sonictoad. If you don't mind amphibians and leftism, hit me up on Twitter at NYHC84. Or just yeah, just look at venture toadulous like me. um,
That's great because there's like at least 15 more questions, but unfortunately we're out of time.
I see you're funny in now. Oh wow, yeah, I did not see because I did not see that on when I was in full screen mode.
Right. But I didn't want to break in. I would much rather you finish your presentation than and then get to questions later instead of not be able to finish your presentation.
Yeah, Ross, I never would have finished. That's why we always
All right, so thanks so much. I think let me look here and I'll tell you who our next guest is. Our next guest is oh, let's see, Larry Cooperman, The Business of Games, a Philosophical Approach.
Oh,
so we'll be seeing you. Make sure. Yeah, that's a good one. He's always got some good advice. Here we go. So please make sure to give us a follow or like right here on what you're watching so you can get notified when the next speaker goes live, which is just going to be in the next few minutes. Thanks so much, Rachel. We appreciate it very much.
All right, take care, everyone.
What were you going to ask?
No, I just said no. Thanks for having me. Take care, everyone.